So it's week 8, by the way.
Yeah.
Thursday Night Football, an excellent game with the Vikings and the Rams, and the storyline was the return of both Puka Nacua and Kupp to help this Rams offense. We got to hear from both players after the game on the band being back together.
I call Kupp the All-Father. I mean, he's the leader of everybody over here between him and Nine. So it's like the ability to be back under his wing and like to follow their leadership is super fun. We trust in those guys so much, and it gives the confidence to everybody out there when 9 and 10, you can see the level of communication they have, and they're processing everything together, and then the ability to communicate to the rest of us, it breeds confidence.
Yeah, I thought it was really impressive. I mean, Puka's had one practice. You know, he had one practice against people since Detroit. And so for him to be able to come back and do what he did today, coming off of one practice, is good. You know, and obviously you aren't giving him the excuse to think he can just practice one time every week or anything like that. But he did a really good job. It was really cool to see, you know, him and Matthew connect how they were.
So what we thought was going to be a limited appearance from Puka Nacua, Matthew, turned into a real solid fantasy night if you had the guts to play him. Targeted 9 times, 7 catches, over 100 receiving yards. Solid day for Kupp as well, especially since he gets the touchdown. But the Rams' dynamic receiver duo is back in the fold, and maybe their season is back as well.
Fortune favors the bold, so shout out to everyone that started Puka Nacua. I think I tweeted out when the news came out, which came out after we did the show yesterday, but when the news came out before the game, I said, look, I would not bench a locked-in starter for him. But if you're deciding between him and another borderline guy, start Puka, because who has more upside than Puka? But again, I said the Rams don't even know how much he's going to be able to play, so how can any of us? So don't beat yourself up too bad if you had him on your bench. But kudos to you if you did start him. I think the exciting thing is that if you used one of your first 3 picks on Puka Nacua and you've held on to him this long, he's back, baby. I mean, he looked great, you know, and the fact that this was the Thursday night game, they now have the mini bye. They're going to have 10 games to prepare for the upcoming schedule. And we also don't know about Kupp's status moving forward. Is this his last game as a Ram? You know, we may have seen his last game as a Los Angeles Ram. We'll get to there in a second. But I think that Puka Nacua and Kupp both immediately locked in as top 15 options going forward, both immediately must starts here.
I just don't. Why would they trade Kupp? Like, what's the point of trading Kupp? You're 1 game out of the lead in the division. You have an old star quarterback, Matthew Stafford. Like, the time to win is now. It's not like the NFC. Is anyone petrified of the Lions without Aiden Hutchinson, who are probably the best team in the NFC? Like, yeah, they're very good, but, you know, I don't think it's insane that the Rams could make the playoffs and go on a run. Like, when they have had those 4 guys, when they've had Stafford, Nacua, Kupp, and Kyren Williams all healthy, they're one of the most efficient offenses in NFL history when those guys are on the field at the same time. And the defense was a little bit better as well last night towards the end. So I think I would imagine that Kupp has to stay on the team. I don't get it.
I don't get it either, but, I mean, those rumors are out there, Connor.
Yeah, the Chiefs apparently were dabbling before they got Hopkins.
Yeah, I mean, there's rumors of the Buccaneers and the 49ers, which is hilarious because, by the way, they're ahead of the 49ers. They have a win they have a head-to-head win over the 49ers in this division. Like, I think you can make a strong argument. Jay, I haven't looked at the odds this morning, so I don't know if you have a sense of this yet, but, like, the Rams, the Seahawks, and Niners are all in play to win that division.
Yeah,
by the way, the Cardinals are 3 and 4.
Cardinals beat the Chargers.
The Cardinals beat the Chargers. I mean,
on DraftKings, every team is shorter than plus 400 to win the division. So everyone is right in the thick of it.
In the mix.
And I will say that a lot of the Kupp reporting was before the win last night. Like, there is a big difference between 2 and 5 and 3 and 4. And I wonder if that win changes the outlook for the Rams going forward.
It certainly. You think it would, but we'll see. But either way, it just goes to show that because the Vikings come in as a very good defense, and it just goes to show that both guys can eat in this offense. I mean, I think especially given the state of the wide receiver position in fantasy these days, with everyone so banged up and beat up, and that you'd have been thrilled with either performance if you started those guys.
Yeah, and I think, to me, Connor, maybe the biggest thing of all is that the Rams were able to block for Matthew Stafford. Like, Stafford had time last night, whereas he'd been running for his life for a lot of the season.
And they have more reinforcements on the way to this offensive line as the season continues. So the Rams are only going to get healthier. That line will get better. Their young pass rushers looked great. Jared Verse could be in line to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Everything looked right for the Rams last night. But despite all of that, of course, a lot of the questions after the game directed at Sean McVay, who called a great game, was about the trade rumors to Kupp. So listen to how McVay addressed them.
Here's what I'll tell you. Teams reached out. Some of the things that I've seen out there, they're just not true. We've addressed that with those individuals. Teams have called about him, and really we let him know what the dialogue was there. And then there's a lot of stuff out there where there's not a lot of accountability to the reports, and that's unfortunate. I don't think about those things. I think about coaching our team. I think a lot of the things that were out there, speculation was exactly what that was, speculation. We're an inside-out organization. I'm really glad to have Cooper Kupp back with us, and that's what I expect to stay that way.
I'm going to say a couple of things real quickly. That number one is that while that was a really impressive answer, he didn't actually say anything.
Nothing at all.
He just so teams have called. He didn't say what he when teams have called and inquired. They didn't say what their response was. Like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, instead of a 3, if you give us a 2, we're in. He didn't address how they reacted to that, other than just to say to Coop. Apparently they did tell Cooper Kupp, by the way, yes, your names are in trade talks. And by the way, I don't know when it's going to be, but whenever Sean McVay decides to get into broadcasting, he's going to be phenomenal.
One of the great voices.
He's going to be phenomenal.
His tone and cadence is slowly descending into like Grudenisms.
Yes.
That's what I kind of noticed.
He's going to be
sometimes.
phenomenal, though. He's going to be, whenever he decides to get into broadcasting, he's going to be phenomenal.
Yes, and he actually says stuff as well. Like he
he's
didn't say the stuff there, but usually he does. In the podcast in the offseason with Rob.
I got to know him a little bit at the Combine when he was the tight ends coach of the Washington professional football team.
One of the greatest offensive staffs in the history of the NFL.
In the history of football.
I'm not kidding.
And so, that's because I knew that, because that's my team. And so, he was, this is many, many years ago, it was late one night at one of the bars at the Combine where I was just like, you're Sean McVay, you're the tight ends coach. And he was excited that anyone knew who the hell he was. And I was just like, here's why, and he knew me a little bit and was just like, and I'm a massive fan of, the team. And so, we spent a half hour just talking about the team, and great guy, the best guy. Anyway, so happy for him to win. And the question I want to ask you guys off of this, right? So Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, starters, no-brainers, great moving forward. Matthew Stafford, in his first 6 games of the year, had thrown only 3 touchdown passes, but in his first game with both guys since week 1, he throws 4 touchdown passes, 279 yards, has 24.8 fantasy points per game. So 4 touchdowns in one game compared with 3 in the previous 6 combined. Is Matthew Stafford back to being a legit QB1 if both Nacua and Kupp are in the on the field? I'll just give you a sense of something. Since the start of last season, in games in which both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are active, he averages 17.4 fantasy points per game. This year's 17.4 would be QB 11 on the season. I posit to you, my friends, is Matthew Stafford back as a QB1, a top 12 quarterback, as long as both guys are out there?
I think he is right on the fringe of that, and you can feel comfortable starting him every week. Like I mentioned, when those guys, and Kyron Williams is a part of this as well, he really helps Stafford overall. And the offensive line getting healthier, the fact that they're going to be in, I think, winnable games every single week, and Stafford just seemed to have a level of comfort. And the other thing, too, is these guys are additive. If you have both of them out there, everything just gets easier as opposed to just having one of them. Stafford was a down-ballot MVP candidate towards the end of last season. He was playing at maybe the highest level of his entire career. So I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that he could get back to that the rest of the season.
For me, it's a yes, just because you look at the schedule, right? They have Seattle next. Seattle throws over expectation as much as anyone, so you like the script of that game. You're not afraid of their secondary. Miami, too, is back, so you could be in a shootout mold as well. New England, they're not stopping anybody. Yeah. And then the Eagles, their secondary hasn't been good either. So if you're looking at the next at least 4 games, I think Stafford will finish as a QB1 and potentially all 4 of them.
I would also argue that not one of the defenses you just mentioned is as good as the Vikings.
Right.
Coming into this game.
Again,
it was a short week and they were on the road, Minnesota was, but still, as you sit here and look at the rest of their upcoming schedule, after that Eagles game you mentioned, they're at the Saints. That certainly doesn't look as scary as it did at the beginning of the year. Home to the Bills. Okay, we just saw the Ravens dice them up a few weeks. At the 49ers, that's a Thursday night game. We've already seen them play the 49ers. Okay, at the Jets is tough. The fantasy playoffs are a little dicey, right? The week before the fantasy playoffs, home to the Bills, at the 49ers, at the Jets, home to the Cardinals. That's weeks 14 through 17. So it's a little up and down there. You don't love at the Jets in week 16.
They're a run funnel.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Correct. That's a big Kyron Williams game.
Yeah, I will say though that like this Rams offense might be so good that it is kind of defense agnostic. Think about what Stafford did when he went into Baltimore towards the end of last season. Baltimore had maybe the best defense in all of football. They had no answer because they had all those guys out there, and Stafford just moved the ball at will.
I think we quickly forget how close this Rams team was to beating the Lions in the playoffs last year.
Yeah,
one different pass interference call.
For sure.
They might have won the game.
And then I think they were probably slightly better than the Bucs, and they could have very easily been in an NFC title game against San Francisco. So, no, I think this is a very good team. I think the defense is probably worse than it was last year because no Aaron Donald hurts because he's maybe the greatest defensive player of all time. But the offense could be just as good. Yeah.
On the other side of this, Sam Darnold started out really hot, 240 yards. He gets the 2 touchdowns, but in the second half took a lot of bad sacks. Really didn't have a lot of answers for the Rams pass.
Well, they
rush.
lost Christian Darrisaw, which was a massive loss.
Maybe the best left tackle in football.
Exactly, and so that was by the way, somebody that the Commanders had a chance to draft and didn't. Thanks, guys. In a year in which we were looking for offensive line help. But Darrisaw's loss, I think, was tough. But yeah, I mean, look, without Darrisaw, like it was tough. Like Aaron Jones got the volume and wasn't able to get there. Sam Darnold was under pressure. I think fantasy-wise, though, I think you got to be happy with 18.2 fantasy points here. Still strong as well. 18 to 25, 240 yards. Connor, you were starting him against me in the League of Assholes. I will say the group chat was more abuzz in the first half than it was in the second half. Connor got a little quiet there in the second.
I said my bet cashed and I was getting points against you, and then no points happened for you in the second half.
It worked out okay. I'm still in our match. We'll see. You also had Justin Jefferson. But I also say, like, there was I forget exactly what the play was, but there was a play, I think it was the second to last or third to last drive, where Sam Darnold hits Jalen Naylor in the hands.
Yeah.
And if Naylor comes down with that, he potentially goes into the end zone, or at least they've got a first down, and they've got 4 sets of downs, inside the red zone. Instead, Naylor just drops it, and they have to settle for the field goal. And
Maybe
if he gets a third touchdown there, I think the narrative on Darnold changes a little bit there.
Fine.
He was fine.
18.2 fantasy points. It's just, you wanted more in a shootout.
Yeah, which is fair. But again, if you have Sam Darnold on your team, like you either picked him up off waivers or was a very late pick, so if you're somebody like Connor Rogers, you know what? Screw you. You've gotten way more production out of Sam Darnold than you ever deserved to have. You should be happy. I think on the road on a short week, you're happy with 18.2 fantasy points. I think he remains a QB1, like a top 12-ish quarterback, an every week starter, regardless of matchup here. Aaron Jones gets a lot of work, doesn't get in the end zone. He's fine. 10.5 fantasy points here. Justin Jefferson, just so ridiculous. And I just want to go back. I have receipts. I'm not going to bring them up right now, but I have receipts. We talked about this in the preseason.
Did you say he was going to be good?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I made the bold prediction that Justin Jefferson was
ride or die candidate.
That's why you're the best, Barry.
God bless. No, but I will say this. There were people legitimately fading Justin Jefferson because there was concerns about the quarterback. And we talked about this, that there was an argument that he could go 2 overall. That he was touchdown agnostic. The stat that he gave out all throughout the preseason was like, this is a guy that averaged over 22 fantasy points a game with Nick Mullins. He is Justin freaking Jefferson. Any semi-professional quarterback, especially in a Kevin O'Connell system, is going to be able to get him the ball. And obviously, Sam Darnold's done that and more. That catch down the sideline was unbelievable. It was 27 yards. We needed 29 and a half to catch the longest reception.
In real time, I thought it was home. And then, unfortunately, it was 3 yards short. Before we move on to injuries, one last thing. There's a lot of concern about the Vikings because they've been leading so much in the first 5 games. That what's this offense going to look like when they're trailing? Well, this season, when they've been trailing, their offense has actually gotten more efficient. So I don't think there's any issue with Sam Darnold. Like, they've lost these games because of their defense. Their defense has gotten worse. The offense is fine. Darnold will be fine in terms of just supplying Justin Jefferson.
By the way, Sam Darnold only had 18 completions in this game, so the under 21 and a half pass completions, my best bet from yesterday, that cashes. Sam Darnold has multiple touchdown passes. Your bet cashes, and we should have cashed the longest reception.
Yeah. So it feels like Justin Jefferson should have gone over.
Yes.
Because he had a magnificent game, but unfortunately he did not cash that specific bet.
We almost completed the Darnold trifecta.
Yes, almost.
The rare Sam Darnold trifecta bet.
But by the way, they wouldn't let me put. I always, whenever we do our bets, I always bet my own, and I always bet. I do a parlay of all of our bets, and they wouldn't let me put longest reception into a parlay.
So you won.
No, I did, and you know what I did? I went to FantasyLife.com. They have a bunch of free bets for every single game, and Fantasy Life, my guys over there, their favorite bet was Munt under on the receiving yards. I swear to God, 18 and a half,
Pretty high for him.
It was 18 and a half
it's
receiving
pretty
yards.
high for him.
We projected him for 5. He ended up with 10, so that cashed as well. So anyway, so the parlay cashed for me, so I was happy about that. Thank you, DraftKings. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.